What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy TK the Official, and welcome back to another episode of TK Sports Talk, where we talk about the NFL, but more importantly, we talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, man. Before we get started with the show, I just want to give a special thanks out to all my new subscribers, everyone who's joined the channel in the last couple of weeks and is looking forward to going to this NFL season and watching the Philadelphia Eagles get another chance to climb that mountain, right? We're not talking repeat around here. We know what we did last year. Last year was last year, right? We are back on the track to get on that mountain, to start at ground zero, right? We are in the training camp days, all right? We are in the ground dog days of football. All right, where it's hot, where we're grinding, where we're trying to fine-tune our purpose, where we're trying to fine-tune our craft, where we're trying to get ready to take that journey, right? That 17-week journey, okay? Hopefully that 22-week journey, all right? Right? That 21, 22-week journey, depending on what's going on, right? We ready to take that 19, 20-week, 21-week journey, depending on what's happening, right? It's 18-game season, right? Got to remember that, right? Okay, it's 18 weeks, 17 games, or maybe it's 18 games. Did they change that this year? Not quite sure. I can't keep up, man. NFL is just doing it right now, man. But the Philadelphia Eagles are also doing it right now, man. And this is the second week of training camp practices. This is training camp practice number 5, all right? The Philadelphia Eagles in the first week were just in their shorts, right? You know, not even any shells, right? Just out there in shorts and their jerseys on, running around, okay? Just like an extended version of OTAs, just getting guys back acclimated to getting their bodies moving and getting used to the type of tempo and pace that they're going to have in practice, right? Okay, and then they took a day off. They had some days off in between. The Philadelphia Eagles came back yesterday, and they were out in their shells, all right? And now today, finally, the Philadelphia Eagles finally had their first full padded practice, and that's what everybody's been waiting for, right? We want to know who is who, right? Because we know what's happening when you're running around in your shorts, when you got your hand placement right, when you're running your routes right, you're running these 7-on-7s, you're running these 3-on-3s, you know, you're running these 2-on-1s, you know, you're doing all these different type of combinations, right? And that's not real football, okay? It's good to see some skill level, all right, coming from our skill positions right there, but we need to understand how you can play on a bump and run. We need to understand, will you come up and make the tackle? We need to know, will you be able to make that reach block, all right? Can you use speed to power to get around that rush, all right? What is your swim move like? What is your bull rush like? Like, let's understand what's really going on. And for a guy like Tyler Steen, right, let's talk about training camp stories, and we'll just use that to go right into the story and what the topic that we're talking about with Tyler Steen, right? Only competition on the offensive side of the ball right now is the right guard position, right? Everyone else is returning back on the team that started last year, okay? From Lane Johnson to Landon Dickerson to Cam Jurgens to George Mailata to Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, even Jahan Dotson, right? Okay, everybody's coming back except for the right guard spot, and Tyler Steen has been here, right? And not only has Tyler Steen been here, he's been able to actually get some valuable snaps and start and finish some games for us. And Tyler Steen has played on both the right side of the line, he's played on the left side of the line, he's played both tackle and guard, okay? Let's just put it like that, all right? He's played both tackle and guard positions, and he's played both on the right and left side of the line, all right? So Tyler Steen, and not only that, when he has come in, he's played very admirable, right? You haven't really seen the announcers bringing up Tyler Steen. We're not really complaining about Tyler Steen. He's come in, he's done his job, right? And had it not be for Mekhi Becton coming in on a 1-year deal, right? A former first-round pick, okay, an awesome talent and a great guy, and he was able to actually do some things at the guard position. Jeff Stoutland's tutelage and coaching, right? And he was a great player, and he was just playing so well that it was just hard to take him off the field, right? And it doesn't mean that Tyler Steen wasn't worthy of being a starting right guard last year, right? The Philadelphia Eagles, as we often find ourselves in a rich position, right? Just find ourselves with an embarrassment of riches with our depth on this football team, the way Howie Roseman has built this, right? Pretty much the only story on the offensive side of the ball, I will say on the offensive side, I can point out to Ainias Smith, right? Ainias Smith was a draft pick of the Philadelphia Eagles last year, right? You know, he had some injuries, didn't start out the season right away, you know, started slowly matriculating himself onto the playing field, onto the practice field, and getting some playing time in some of these games that he was in until what we was able to see from him in the last game of the season. We also was able to see some great things from Jahan Dotson in the last game game of the season. So Jahan Dotson is clearly the third wide receiver, but it's interesting who's going to be that fourth wide receiver, right? And right now, if I had to go between Terrence Marshall, who also has been turning some heads at practice. Unfortunately, he got hurt today and walked off with a lower leg injury. Hopefully he'll be okay so he can really show what he can do now that the Bullets are actually live, right? But you had Terrence Marshall. You also have Johnny Wilson. And then you also have Anais Smith. And again, Anais Smith was a guy I like coming out of college. He reminds me of Steve Smith, a guy that when he catches the ball, he's trying to score, right? And not only is he trying to score, he's trying to be physical and he's trying to be fast, right? And he really doesn't matter who's in his way. He's trying to run right through you, right? And this guy's got a lot of attitude, and you love to have something like that on this football team. Definitely a guy that I think can catch, one of those 5-yard passes that a lot of these other quarterbacks like to go and like to throw, rather, and then possibly take it the distance, right? But on the defensive side of the ball is where we're getting most of our stories coming out of training camp, all right? And there are, and for right reason, right? We've lost a lot of players on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, we can go through it, right? We lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson, right? Because everyone else goes through it, so why don't we go through it, right? We lost Milton Williams. We lost Josh Sweat on that side of the ball, right? We lost Brandon Graham because he, naturally just went ahead and retired, right? We lost Darius Slay, right, who is now playing in Pittsburgh, right? All right, and these are positions that we have to fill, and maybe that Darius Slay, maybe that cornerback position is proven to be a little bit more of a difficult position to fill, or a difficult position to have confidence in just yet, and we'll touch on that. But right now, Moro Ojomo, right, is the first person up to fill in the shoes for Milton Williams, right? This is a typical, this is a similar type of a player, okay, not as long of an arms as Milton Williams, maybe not as quite athletic as Milton Williams, but maybe just as powerful, if not more powerful than what Milton Williams was. Maybe a little bit more twitchier, maybe is a little bit more savvier, right, with how to set up some of his rushes, right? This is a guy who is not only impressed without the pads being on, he is now still impressing with the pads being on. And we saw what we got from Moro Ojomo last year, right? When you really break it down and you look at the numbers, right, he was one of the better defensive tackles when it comes to pressure rates, when it comes to pass rush win rate. Right. And this was what we knew. We were confident that he was going to step in and fill Milton Williams' shoes. And that looked like that's exactly what's happening right now. Alongside with Jordan Davis losing the weight that he had, I'm really hoping that Jordan Davis is able to come into the game this year and really be able to sustain some real playing time, because teams are going to have to pass the ball against this Philadelphia Eagles defense. Right. The way this offense is built, the way this defense is built, right, especially to limit the big plays, right, and to keep the score down as best as possible, right, and not let anything over their head, right. It's going to be imperative for teams to try to throw the ball to either stay in the game, or two, to get back in the game, all right. And with that being said, I hope that turns out to be more pass rushes for a guy like Jordan Davis, right, who had 2 sacks in 2 straight games, in the NFC Championship game against Jaden Daniels, and also in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes, right. And again, these are on limited chances. These are on limited rushes, right? If we get this guy maybe 15 to 20% more rushes, I think that he can wear down the defensive. He wear down an offensive line. Not to mention, listen, like, how about we not straight bull rush Jordan Davis, right? How about Jordan Davis is a guy running like a 4.5 freaking 40, right? You guys remember when he chased down Josh Allen on that scramble, right? Yeah, my big man was out of breath, but shoot, big man ran a long way, and he ran there pretty fast to be able to force Josh Allen out of bounds like that. Right, so why not run some games? Why not run some tight end DT, some DEDT stunts, right? Some twists, right? Get Jordan Davis picked off and coming off the edge with a full head of steam, right? Some different things like that, which I'm sure that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to incorporate, because they want, they want Jordan Davis on this team, right? But that's an update on Moro Ojomo. Quinyon Mitchell, man, what can we say about Guantanamo Bay? Listen, that young man has come through. Listen, how lucky, right? Because the next 2 players I'm going to talk about, right? Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. How lucky are the Philadelphia Eagles? How good is Howie Roseman and his scouting staff and that front office staff that he has for us to be able to reap the rewards of drafting both Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in the same draft? right? These two guys are two of the best cornerbacks. Well, they were two of the best cornerbacks last year against man defense, right? All right, and that's not even what the Philadelphia Eagles play typically most of the time, which is why, the Philadelphia Eagles are tinkering around with at defense and moving Cooper DeJean around, and that's why they want him on the field, right? Regardless of what's going on. We know Quinyon Mitchell's going to be on the field, but if Cooper DeJean got to line up at safety, if Cooper DeJean got to line up at cornerback, right? If the team come out and they in the two wide receiver set and they with tight ends, Cooper DeJean got to be on the field somehow, some way. If it's not at the cornerback position, then it's got to be at the safety spot, right? And that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother situation, because we're really looking for somebody to step up at the safety spot and someone to step up at the cornerback spot. But let's not get ahead of ourselves when talking about this. But Quinyon Mitchell has come back in. He's picked up where he's left off from last season, and that's what you expect from this entire football team, right? We got a young football team, especially on defense. This defense went to the Super Bowl, was the best defense in the league last year, right? They feel like they should be the best defense in the league. They feel like they should go back to the Super Bowl, and all they're going to do is just get better, right? These were a lot of first-year players. We have a couple more first-year players that are in here, but our second-year guys can now, that's just it's just the old teach the new. Right, and we just keep rotating in, and these guys just coming into a factory. The Philadelphia Eagles have really built a football program, right? All right, Cooper DeJean again. Cooper DeJean is getting looks at safety. He's getting, all right, we already know he's been playing the nickel cornerback slot, and he's also been getting looks on the outside spot, right, which is key because it's a real competition between Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson, right? We're not quite sure who's winning that competition. Keely Ringo has been playing fairly well in training camp thus far this season, right? But the thing with Keely is, and what a lot of people are seeing, is that he just right now he's not showing great ball skills, right? He's not showing the ability to be able to locate the ball and break it up, or just to make a good solid play on the football. It's not that he's getting beat or he's out of position, right? So we're seeing they want to see what Adoree Jackson has, right? This was a guy who was a first-round pick, and they've been giving Adoree Jackson first-team reps in the last couple of practices. But again, this is a guy who was a first-round pick, right? And this was a guy who had a stint in Houston, who had a stint with the New York Giants, and things didn't work out there. And now this is a guy who's found his way here to Philadelphia. And as Vic Fangio was talking about earlier today, right, it's really time for Adoree Jackson to prove what kind of player he's going to be, right? If you're going to grab this spot, right, this is a spot that's open right now, right? We wanted Keely to be able to win this spot right now. Keely has not dominated and taken over this cornerback spot opposite of Quinyon Mitchell. So which one of these two players are going to step up and grab this spot? Because we need someone to step up and grab the spot, or else we're going to have to look elsewhere, right? And we don't want to have to put Cooper DeJean out there, right, unless we're in our base personnel. And that's a whole nother topic, a whole nother thing to talk about, and we'll get into that, right? Jahad Campbell, right? Again, right? Shout out and kudos to Howie Roseman. Kudos to this Philadelphia Eagles scouting staff. It's really big kudos to the scouting staff. And, the reason why the Philadelphia Eagles are able to get players like Jahad Campbell and to get players like Nolan Smith, right, in back-to-back drafts at number 30 is because the way that they have built this team. Right? Not only the way that they have built this team through the draft, but the way that they have developed the players, right? And that's one thing that Nick Sirianni doesn't get credit for enough, especially when you start comparing him to coaches like Sean McVay, right? Sean McVay, F them picks, right? That's what they were about, right? They were about just buying the team, getting the team in here, a team full of free agents and whatever they had to do, and go ahead and trying to buy themselves a championship successfully, right? But Nick Sirianni has built this team since he got here, going from 9-8. And then 14 wins and two out of 3 seasons, and over 10 wins, right? Over 11 wins, if that's what we're going to say, right? Over 11 wins in 3 straight seasons, right? All right. Nick Sirianni has done an absolute wonderful job building this team through the draft, and so is Howie Roseman, right? So, but Jahad Campbell again fell to the Philadelphia Eagles because most teams thought that his shoulder injury was going to keep him from playing games during the regular season, right? Especially being ready for the first half of the season, maybe being an issue throughout the duration of his career. Well, Jahad Campbell has been listed as limited and has been pretty much playing all the time, right? He's pretty much getting full reps out there right, at the linebacker position. He's also, after practice and before practice, taking reps at the overhang position, the rush position, whatever you want to call it, edge position, DM position, whatever you want to call it, right? He's been getting reps at that as well. Jahad Campbell is an absolute megastar. He's one of the best linebackers that I've seen in college football for quite some time, and I think that the Philadelphia Eagles are just fortunate to be able to have this guy. And just think about the versatility, right, between Jahad Campbell and Zach Bond, right? And don't forget about Nakobe Dean, right? Because when Nakobe Dean comes back, the question is, should Nakobe Dean get his start back, or should Jahad Campbell start over Nakobe Dean? And I think absolutely not. When Nakobe Dean is ready, Nakobe Dean absolutely deserves to have his starting spot back, right? And this is just going to add to this football team. This is just going to add another multiple layer of what the Philadelphia Eagles can do, right? Because not only can we come out in our bare 5-2 front, right? Not only can we run our 3-4 front, right? We can also match teams depending on personnel. We can play, if we want to, in a 4-3 front, right? We have 3 athletic linebackers, right? Nakobe Dean is a good coverage linebacker. Zach Bond is a pretty decent coverage linebacker. Jahad Campbell is coming into the league being known for being a good coverage linebacker, right? And then Nakobe Dean is a great blitzing linebacker. Zach Bond is a great blitzing linebacker. Also has experience playing as an edge rusher, right? And Jahad Campbell is now coming in as a good rusher and also has experience playing as an edge rusher, right? So who's going to be coming if the Philadelphia Eagles are in a 4-3 defense? If we want to go down to a 5-man front, right? Does Jahad Campbell bump down? Do we bump Zach Bond down, right? What's the weak side of our defense? What's the strong side of our defense, right? How would you know, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I just think that it is such a big thing to have Jahad Campbell ready to go at the start of the season and add it to this defense, especially right now when you're struggling a little bit to find who's going to be your starting cornerback opposite of Quinyon Mitchell, right? And Quinyon Mitchell, another training camp storyline to add on with Quinyon Mitchell is he's now traveling, right? He's now playing on both sides of the field, both right cornerback, left cornerback, right? Which is another really big help, especially when you're struggling to find who's going to fill in those second shoes, right? And when you're talking about Keely Ringo and the cornerback spot, right? There's a lot of pressure on these guys out here. Again, no preseason football games have been played, right? These guys are still getting acclimated, getting warmed up, right, getting comfortable, right? So let's not make any prejudgments too soon on who's doing what players should be starting over this, that, and the third, right? You got to understand there's a lot of pressure on these guys, and if you're a guy like Keely Ringo, right, you were a 4th-round pick, all your boys on the team are playing, everybody from Georgia out there is doing their thing, right? You want to get out there, but not only do you have to fill in the shoes of a guy like Darius Slay, you got to fill in the shoes for a guy like Darius Slay whose team just won a Super Bowl, right? This is a Super Bowl team, right? This team has certain expectations, and I do think that Keely Ringo is going to rise up, and it would be great for the Eagles if Keely Ringo can actually establish himself and give himself the confidence and give this team the confidence that he can go out there and win that job, right? Our last player on defense who has just been absolutely wrecking things and making a great name for himself, and a player that I'm really starting to like. The more and more I watch, the more and more I listen to, the more and more I understand his passion for the game and how much he yearns just to become better, right? And how hungry this guy is. And that's Jix Hunt, right? Jix Hunt, man, I watched this guy. We know his story, right? Jix Hunt was the safety. He came out of Cornell, right? And then he had a growth spurt. He wound up transferring over to Houston Christian, right? And then he played some defense for them as an edge player, defensive end, like learning how to use his frame. And the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Again, shout out to Howie Roseman and his staff, right? For being able to have the foresight to see, like, this kid right here has all the tools, has all the intangibles. And not only can he do that, he's great in coverage, right? So we just talked about the Philadelphia Eagles being able to play the 4-3 defense, right? And being able to drop a rusher down, whether it be Zach Bond, whether it be Jahad Campbell, right? And then bring 5, right? But how about we do a simulated pressure, right? Where you think we're bringing 5, and then we actually drop Jix Hunt back, right, into coverage, right, because he's able to do that. This is a guy who has a safety background, who's very athletic, right? Nolan Smith also was a guy who's used to being able to drop into coverage and come off the edge and blitz, right, coming out of Georgia, right? So I just think, man, like, when you think about it, although the safety position is up in flux, right, and we'll get into talking about that, and although the cornerback position right now, we're not quite sure what we have, I don't think we need to go outside and try to find that right now, being as though we're going to move Quinyon Mitchell all over the place, right? right? Depending on who we're playing. Now, when we do play some of these teams that do have a wide receiver 1A and a 1B, you know, whatever the case is, right? That may be a little bit more of something, but with the way this Philadelphia Eagles defense is and the way this pass rush is and the way that Vic Fangio is able to put this Philadelphia Eagles team in the advantageous situations, right? I don't think we really worry about that too much, right? You know, so we'll see how things go out and play on into the season. But Jix Hunt really came on. He really showed flashes throughout the season. You started to see his name, especially as what's my man that just got out of here, especially as Bryce Huff started to grow out of favor with the Philadelphia Eagles. You really started to see Jix Hunt, you know, get some spot time here and there, right? And he was like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? And he started to make plays toward the end of the season. As you saw, he grew in the postseason, and in the Super Bowl, he looked like a man possessed. He looked like a man who knew what he wanted to do. He looked like a man that was growing some confidence, and he looked like someone who was just at the beginning stages, right? Just scratching the surface, just scratching the ice. So I'm really, really excited about what Jix Hunt is going to look like, his own development. He was out there at the Pass Rushing Summit. He learned from a lot of good guys like Max Crosby and other guys that were out there as well. Him and Nolan Smith both were out there, man. So these are two guys that just, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni have just done a great job of bringing in competitive-minded guys who just want to compete, guys who just want to compete with themselves, right? They want to compete with themselves. They're obsessed with getting better, right? And that's one of the things you hear Nick Sirianni talk about all the time, right? Just the obsession with getting better, right? And I mean, it's a real thing, and you see it with these players. As great as they are, right, there are things that they're just good at, and they want to get great at those things, right? And that's one of the things that Nick Sirianni talked about yesterday. We'll get into that in a little bit, as I don't want to make the video too long. But just a lot of updates to get into with training camp, a lot of storylines. I'll make some separate videos about some other different things that I think are some fun topics to talk about. I mean, you know, this is just a football show, man. If you want to nerd out with me about football, if you want to talk Philadelphia Eagles football with me, I mean, we're going to do it, man. We're going to get into it, right? So we talked about a couple of those things. Now, what's going on at the safety position, I'm not sure. Right now, the only thing that we know is Reed Blankenship. And how good is Reed Blankenship? That's a whole nother story for another time. Don't want to get anybody upset just yet, right? But we need to figure out, is it going to be Cooper DeJean playing safety? Is it going to be Sidney Brown playing safety, right? Is it going to be Andrew Mukuba playing safety? Who is a great player, right? If you guys don't know Andrew Mukuba, once you see Andrew Mukuba play, he is a great player. I mean, this guy is an absolute gamer, right? Got a little bit of a shoulder injury right now, but this guy is 100% a gamer. You're going to love what Andrew Mukuba brings. He's going to bring that whole C.J. Gardner-Johnson attitude and game without so much of the talking, right? All right, he's going to be a great guy, right? Now, again, Nick Sirianni did talk to the team, did talk to the media yesterday, and everybody wants to know, like, you know, you the Philadelphia Eagles, you just won, right? How do you get better, right? Like what do you do, right? And Nick Sirianni just talked about it, right? Teams are going to be watching everything that we did good, and they're going to be trying to counter the things that we did good. So the things that we did good, we got to now do them great, right? We got to get better at doing the things that we did okay, that we did good at, right? We got to find ways to be even better at that, right? So that the teams that think that they caught up haven't, because we've gotten even better. We've improved, right? And and how do they get better? The Philadelphia Eagles get better by individual players making themselves better, by improving their own game, right? By finding something that they're just good at and working on that until they can be great at that, right? That is how the Philadelphia Eagles get even better, right? I mean, that's the only way, right? Yeah, you don't think a guy like Saquonbarkley, right, thinks that he couldn't have ran for 25 or maybe 26, 2,700 yards last year during the regular season, even with him not playing the last game, right? Even with him sitting some of the fourth quarters. You don't think that he thinks about some of the runs that he had and some of other decisions that he could have made. You don't think he thinks about picking his feet up a little bit more when he's getting toward the end zone and there's a lot of traffic down there on the ground, because he could have had some more additional touchdowns. You don't think he thinks about pressing the hole a little bit more before he bounce out, or looking off a guy when he's in, like, you know, all the different, like, find the things that make you better. As great as you are, as great as everybody thinks you are your own biggest critic, and you know what can make you better. And that's what I love about this Philadelphia Eagles football team. They all have a thirst to get better, and it starts with their head coach, right? And it really starts with their owner, right? Low key, candidly, Jeffrey Lurie wants to stick it to the NFL. Jeffrey Lurie wants to be one of the owners in the NFL with the most championships, right? So he can be he's already one of the loudest voices in the room, so he can stamp why he's one of the loudest voices in the room. Howie Roseman, well, you know Howie Roseman's story, right? You know what happened prior to Chip Kelly, post Chip Kelly, right? Howie Roseman, is he the best? Is it him? Is it Veach? Is it some one or two other people, right? Let it be no debate who the best is. Nick Sirianni, right? We know everyone talked about Nick Sirianni, right? After he came out in a press conference and said some of the things that he said and wasn't quite ready to meet the media. He was nervous, right? And there's nothing wrong with being nervous, right? Some of us, that's how it is, right? And also, like, who was this guy that the Philadelphia Eagles went ahead and hired, right? You know, all the different things that the media are saying about him. Nick Sirianni's been to 2 Super Bowls, won 1, should have won 2, right? To be perfectly honest with you, right? So he's got a chip on his shoulder. He wants to be the best. Jalenhurts got a chip on his shoulder. He wants to be the best. A.J. Brown knows that he's the best wide receiver in the league, but he plays in a run-dominant offense, and he can't shine the way that he wants to shine, but he knows that he's the best wide. He wants to prove that he's the best wide receiver in the league, right? And so how can Jalen Hurts and how can A.J. Brown both prove that within playing within the offensive system and go out and have a great year? Devontae Smith, right? You see him, right? I mean, this is a guy who won the freaking Heisman as a wide receiver playing for Alabama. This was a guy who had over 200 yards in the first half and 3 touchdowns in a national championship game and didn't even play the second half. Right, like, this is an amazing player that everyone knew that the focus was, and they still couldn't stop him week after week after week, but he still slided. He still got people saying he can't do it. He still got people saying he's not a top 10 wide receiver, right? He still got people saying that he's too small for this and too small for that, right? He still got a chip on his shoulder, right? Though Saquonbarkley wants to be the best running back of all time. Right? These are the type of football players. We already know how the offensive line is, how Jordan Mailata, how Landon Dickinson, how Cam Jurgensen is, how we already know how Lane Johnson is, right? We're going to get Tyler Steen to fill in there, but these are the kind of guys that we have on the offensive side of the ball, and on the defensive side of the ball, we got guys coming from Georgia, right? Jordan Davis talked about just how these guys are coming from Georgia with the mentality like on this football field. Jalen Hurts talked about how he started trying to tell Howie Roseman, listen, we need to go through the SEC, right? We need to start pulling boys from SEC because they got that championship mindset because they've been through it. They've been through the fire, right? All right, that is the team that the Philadelphia Eagles have, and that's how this team is going to get better. And that's how this team is going to climb that mountain to get back to the NFL Super Bowl game so they can win another championship. This is your boy TK the Official, man. This has been a training camp update. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We're going to break down some of the things that I talked about today. We're going to get into some of the battles and talk about some of the different things that the Philadelphia Eagles should do and could do, and actually and get into a couple of things and really start debating on a couple of different things going into the season, right? Because believe it or not, we do have some questions that we do need to talk about. Again, this is your boy TK the Official. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with somebody who needs to watch it, man. Yeah, y'all know, as I always say, right? Go Birds. I'm out.